The
This
assembly
tablet
hall went
contains clear
silent. The
proof
second
of the
vice
disruption.
principal, Dana
We will
Pierce,
not
held the
tolerate
tablet
this
above her
behavior at
head,
this school.
like evidence at a trial.
Noah, look at me when I
Carter,
speak to you.
she said, her voice sharp enough to cut through 300 whispering students. Would you like to explain to everyone why you were seen taking this from the staff supply closet? Noah Carter, 10 years old, stood alone in the center of the polished gymnasium floor. Every eye in the room fixed on him. His hands were shaking, though he tried to keep them still at his sides. I didn't take it from the closet, he said. It's mine. Well, it's my dad's. He let me borrow it for the science fair. A ripple of laughter moved through the older students seated in the bleachers. Ryan Whitfield, front row, arms crossed, smirked without bothering to hide it. Your father, Ms. Pierce repeated, letting the words hang in the air with obvious disbelief, owns a tablet worth more than most people's cars. He does, Noah said quietly. Noah, I understand things are difficult at home, but lying doesn't help you. Stealing school property is a serious offense, and I will not tolerate it, no matter how sympathetic your circumstances. I'm not lying. Noah's voice cracked, just slightly, the first sign that the humiliation was starting to break through the composure he'd practiced his whole life. Call my dad, please. He'll tell you. Security, Ms. Pierce said, not to Noah, but to the guard standing near the double doors. Please escort Noah to the office. We'll be contacting his guardian. The guard, a heavy-set man named Frank, who had known Noah since kindergarten drop-off, hesitated for half a second before stepping forward, his own discomfort plain on his face. It was in that exact moment, as Frank's hand landed gently on Noah's shoulder, that a tall man in a plain gray coat walked through the gymnasium's side entrance, moving with the unhurried calm of someone who already knew exactly what he would find. Noah saw him first. His whole body went still. My dad is coming, Noah said, loud enough now that the whispering stopped entirely. If a story about a child fighting to be believed already has you sitting forward, you're going to want to see how far this goes. Hit subscribe now, drop a comment telling us where you're watching from, and stay with us, because what happens next changes everything. 1 month earlier, Noah Carter had been exactly what he always was, the quiet kid in the third row who wore the same 2 sweaters on rotation and never once mentioned that his father could buy the entire school district without noticing the dent in his bank account. Alexander Carter had built his fortune in logistics and quietly diversified into technology before most of his competitors understood what the internet would become. He was worth, by most estimates, $11 billion. He was also, by his own design, almost invisible outside of boardrooms. No magazine profiles, no red carpets, a private life guarded as fiercely as his business decisions. Why don't you want people to know? Noah had asked him once, years earlier, sitting at their kitchen table over a dinner of grilled cheese sandwiches that Alexander had made himself, because he insisted on doing that at least 3 nights a week, no matter how many staff members he employed elsewhere. Because the moment people know what your father has, Alexander told him, they stop seeing who you are. They see dollar signs instead of your face. Your mother and I decided a long time ago that you deserve to grow up as just Noah, not the billionaire's son. Noah's mother, Elena, had died when he was 6, a sudden illness that took her in the space of 4 devastating months. What she left behind, more than the modest house Alexander insisted they keep instead of moving into anything grander, was a philosophy Alexander had clung to ever since, that character mattered more than comfort, and that a child raised without struggle rarely learned who they really were. She used to say wealth was a magnifying glass, Alexander told Noah once, tucking him in on a night when the grief still sat heavy in the house. It doesn't make a good person better or a bad person worse. It just makes whatever's already there bigger, for everyone to see. She wanted you to build your character first. The magnifying glass could come later. Noah barely remembered his mother's voice anymore. Not really. Just fragments. An image of her laughing in the kitchen. The particular way she used to hum while she read to him before bed. What he did remember, clearly and completely, was the last thing she'd told him, sitting up in a hospital bed that had become too familiar to both of them. "Whatever your dad has," she'd said, her voice thin but steady, "it was never going to be the thing that made you good. That part's already yours. Don't let anyone convince you otherwise. And don't let it convince you either." Noah hadn't fully understood it at 6. He understood it perfectly now, 4 years and one humiliating assembly later. Noah carried that with him every day at Brookhaven Preparatory Academy, a school his father had chosen, specifically because it had a needs-based scholarship program and did not require families to disclose their income publicly. Alexander paid full tuition anonymously through a shell trust and told the administration only what was strictly necessary, that Noah's father worked in logistics and traveled frequently, which was, technically, entirely true. What Noah hadn't accounted for was how differently a school could treat a child once it assumed he had nothing. "Noah, did you actually do the reading? Or are you going to guess again?" Mr. Davies, his homeroom teacher, said it lightly, almost like a joke, in front of the entire class, the week before the incident. Noah had, in fact, finished the reading 2 days early and annotated half the margins. "I did the reading," Noah said. "Well, let's see if it shows." Mr. Davies said it with the particular tone reserved for students he'd already decided weren't worth the effort of real attention. Ryan Whitfield, whose father Gerald Whitfield had donated the new athletic wing 2 years earlier, never had to raise his hand twice. Teachers called on him first, praised his half-finished answers, and overlooked the fact that he routinely turned in assignments late, while other students were marked down for the same offense. "It's not fair," Noah's friend Priya whispered to him once, during a group project where Ryan had contributed almost nothing and still received full marks. "Everyone knows Ryan didn't do half of that." "It's fine," Noah said, though it clearly wasn't. "I'd rather be good at things quietly than loud about things I'm not good at." It was the kind of thing his mother might have said, and it was the kind of restraint that made the other kids underestimate exactly how much Noah noticed and exactly how much he was capable of. The bullying, when it came, rarely arrived as anything a teacher would ever act on. It was smaller than that, and crueler for it. Ryan and his friends would forget to save Noah a seat at the lunch table where the scholarship kids usually sat, forcing him to eat alone by the recycling bins some days. They'd mock the sole he'd glued back onto his sneakers rather than ask his father for a new pair he didn't think he needed. "Nice shoes, Carter," Ryan said one morning, loud enough for a cluster of students near the lockers to hear. "Did you find those in a dumpster? Or did your dad actually buy them for you?" Hard to tell which is sadder. Noah kept walking. "They still work fine." "That's the thing about you," Ryan said, falling into step just to keep the audience. "You never fight back. It's weird. Almost like you know something the rest of us don't. Or maybe I just don't think you're worth the energy," Noah said, and for once there was an edge in it, quickly swallowed back down. Priya caught up to him at his locker afterward. "One day you're going to snap at him, and I want front row seats." "I'm not going to snap," Noah said. "My mom used to say anger is expensive. You spend it and get nothing back. I'd rather save it for something that actually matters." "That's either the wisest thing I've ever heard a 10-year-old say, or deeply concerning," Priya said, and Noah, despite everything, laughed. The Brookhaven Regional Science Competition, held every spring, was the one place where none of the school politics were supposed to matter, where the project itself, not the name attached to it, was meant to speak. Noah had been working on his entry for 4 months in the garage workshop his father had built him, a functioning water purification system designed for use in areas without reliable electricity, using a low-cost filtration method he'd adapted from a paper he'd found in a university archive and improved on his own. "This is genuinely good work, Noah," Ms. Alvarez, the science teacher, told him during an after-school session, turning the prototype over in her hands with real admiration. Patricia Alvarez was the one teacher at Brookhaven who had never once treated Noah differently because of his sweaters. "Better than good. This could place at state, not just regional." "You really think so?" "I know so," Keep this locked in your supply locker until the competition. Some of the other students get competitive in ways that aren't healthy. Ryan Whitfield's project, by contrast, had stalled for weeks. His father had hired an actual engineer to consult, but Ryan himself had contributed little beyond his name on the cover page, and everyone in the science lab knew it. "What's your angle, Carter?" Ryan asked one afternoon, hovering near Noah's workstation with the particular restlessness of someone circling something he wanted. "No angle. Just trying to build something that works. Must be nice, having all the time in the world to tinker in a garage, while the rest of us have actual lives." Noah didn't answer. He'd learned, over years of exactly this kind of comment, that responding rarely changed anything except giving Ryan more to work with. 3 days before the competition, Noah arrived at the science lab to find his locker open, his prototype's core filtration chamber missing, and half his research notes gone from the binder he'd left inside. "Miss Alvarez, someone took part of my project," Noah said, his voice unsteady in a way it rarely was. Miss Alvarez's face went pale. "Are you sure? The filtration chamber is gone, and pages from my notes, the calculations for the flow rate, specifically." When Miss Alvarez reported it to Principal Robert Hensley, the response was not what either of them expected. "Noah, I understand you're under pressure," Hensley said, folding his hands over his desk in a gesture that was meant to look thoughtful and instead looked practiced. "But we can't launch an investigation based on an accusation with no evidence. Perhaps you misplaced the pieces." "I didn't misplace anything," Noah said. "Someone took it. Do you have proof it was taken, or proof of who took it?" Noah didn't. Not yet. 2 days later, Ryan Whitfield's science project suddenly featured a filtration chamber design startlingly similar to Noah's, and calculations that matched, almost line for line, the missing pages from Noah's notebook. "That's mine," Noah said, standing in front of Ryan's display table during the pre-competition review, his voice rising for the first time anyone had heard. "That's my design. Those are my calculations. Prove it," Ryan said, smiling in a way that made it clear he already knew Noah couldn't. Mr. Davies, standing nearby, stepped in with visible irritation, not at Ryan, but at Noah. "Noah, that's a serious accusation to make against another student. Ryan's father has been incredibly generous to this school. I'd think carefully before you keep pushing this. You're not even going to look at the flow rate calculations? They use my exact margin of error, down to the decimal. Nobody makes the same rounding mistake by coincidence. I think you're upset your project didn't go as smoothly as you'd hoped, and you're looking for someone to blame," Mr. Davies said. "That happens. It doesn't mean foul play." Miss Alvarez tried to intervene. "I saw Noah's project weeks ago. I can attest to the design similarities. I photographed the prototype for my own records. Actually, before the parts went missing, the filtration chamber in these photos is identical to what's sitting on Ryan's table right now." "Noted," Hensley said, in a tone that made clear it would not, in fact, be noted anywhere that mattered. "But without physical evidence, I can't disqualify a student on the basis of a teacher's memory against another teacher's support for a different student. Let's move forward." "You just said her photographs weren't evidence," Noah said, and the room went quiet at the sharpness in a 10-year-old's voice. "What would be evidence to you? Because it feels like nothing would be, if it's about Ryan." "That's enough, Noah," Hensley said. "I understand you're upset, but accusing this school of bias isn't going to help your case." Noah went home that night, and, for the first time since his mother died, cried in front of his father without trying to hide it. "They didn't even look," Noah said, his voice muffled against Alexander's shoulder. "They just believed him because his dad gives them money." Alexander held his son and said nothing for a long moment, his jaw tightening in a way Noah had rarely seen. "I'm proud of you for standing up," he finally said, "even when it didn't work. That matters more than you know. It doesn't feel like it matters. It will. I promise you it will." What Alexander didn't say, because he didn't yet know how serious the situation would become, was that he was already quietly making calls, not to intervene directly, not yet, but to understand exactly what kind of institution his son had been trusting for the last 4 years. The morning of the science fair presentation, Alexander handed Noah his own personal tablet, a device worth several $1,000s, customized with security features from Alexander's own company, so Noah could pull up backup documentation and photos proving the timeline of his work, in case anyone questioned him again. "Just in case," Alexander said, "show them the photo timestamps if you need to. Nobody can argue with metadata." It should have been Noah's proof. Instead, it became the second attack. "Noah, where did you get that?" Mr. Davies asked, spotting the sleek device in Noah's bag, before homeroom even started, his eyes narrowing with immediate suspicion. "My dad let me borrow it. For the science fair, in case I needed backup files." "That's a $4,000 tablet, Noah." "I know what it's worth," Noah said, and something in his tone, steady, unbothered by the number, made Mr. Davies even more suspicious rather than less. By lunch, the rumor had already reached Ms. Pierce, who confiscated the tablet directly from Noah's backpack during a locker check she claimed was routine. "This matches the description of a device reported missing from the staff supply closet 3 weeks ago," she said, holding it up. "It's not from any supply closet. It's my father's personal tablet. Noah, I've been more than patient with you through this science project dispute. I understand things at home might be hard, and I want to be compassionate, but you cannot keep escalating these stories." What Noah didn't see, because it happened behind Principal Hensley's closed office door an hour earlier, was Gerald Whitfield's phone call, demanding the matter be handled decisively and permanently, so his son could compete without the distraction of ongoing accusations. "I don't think you understand the position this puts me in," Hensley had said into the phone, his voice tight. "If the Carter boy keeps insisting, then make sure he stops insisting," Whitfield said. "I didn't fund half this school's renovations, so a scholarship kid could turn my son's competition into a circus. Handle it, Robert. Quietly. And today, or I'll have a conversation with the board about where my future contributions are better spent." Hensley had hung up the phone and sat in silence for a long moment before calling Ms. Pierce into his office. That was the moment Ms. Pierce called the emergency assembly, deciding, in a decision she would later deeply regret, that a public accounting in front of the entire school would finally put an end to what she'd convinced herself was a pattern of dishonesty from a struggling child seeking attention. She had, of course, never once called Alexander Carter to ask a single question. "If you think the injustice ends there, stay with us, because it's about to get so much worse before it gets better. And if this story has you feeling something already, make sure you've liked this video so more people see it." Alexander Carter walked into the gymnasium in the same plain gray coat he wore to nearly everything. No entourage, no announcement. Just a father who had received a text message from his 10-year-old son 40 minutes earlier that read simply, "They think I stole your tablet. Everyone's watching. Please come." He had driven himself, an assistant vice principal near the entrance, not recognizing him and seeing only an unremarkable man in a plain coat, had actually tried to stop him at the door. "Sir, we're in the middle of a school matter. You'll need to wait in the front office." "My son is the school matter," Alexander said, already walking past her. "Sir, I really do need you to check in properly." "You'll have every chance to check me in properly in about 30 seconds, Alexander said, not unkindly, but without slowing down. "Can I help you?" Frank the security guard asked, his hand still resting lightly on Noah's shoulder, uncertain what to do now that both the accused child and this new arrival were staring at each other with obvious relief. "I'm Noah's father," Alexander said. "I believe there's been a misunderstanding about a tablet." Miss Pierce, still holding the device aloft, turned toward him with the particular impatience of someone who had already decided how this conversation would go. "Mr. Carter, I appreciate you coming, but this is a serious matter of school property and honesty. Perhaps we should discuss this privately rather than in front of the students." "I'd rather discuss it right here," Alexander said, his voice calm, almost gentle, though something steel-edged sat underneath it. Since you decided the accusation belonged in front of the whole school, I think the resolution should happen in the same place. A murmur moved through the bleachers. Very well, Miss Pierce said, clearly unbothered, clearly certain of her position. This tablet was found in your son's possession. It matches a device reported missing from our staff supply closet. He claims it's yours. I find that difficult to believe. Why is that difficult to believe? Mr. Carter, with respect, this is a $4,000 device. I'm sure you understand my concern. Given, she paused, glancing pointedly at Noah's worn sweater. The circumstances, Alexander repeated slowly. I don't say this to be unkind, but I have a responsibility to this school, and sometimes children exaggerate their situations to explain things that seem implausible. Alexander held out his hand. May I see the tablet? Ms. Pierce, perhaps sensing for the first time that something about this exchange wasn't going the way she expected, handed it over. Alexander pressed his thumb to the reader on the back. The screen unlocked instantly, his own private company dashboard flashing across it, along with a live feed labeled with a corporate security clearance. The entire gymnasium could see clearly. On the projected overflow screen, the AV club had, coincidentally, left running for the assembly. The gym went utterly silent. This tablet is registered to Carter Dynamics Group, Alexander said, still calm, still quiet. Under my personal security clearance, I gave it to my son 3 days ago because I was concerned exactly this kind of situation might happen. I was right to be concerned. I simply underestimated how far it would go. Ms. Pierce's face drained of color. We had no way of knowing. You had a way of knowing, Alexander said. You could have called me. My number is on file with the school, has been for 4 years. Nobody called. Principal Hensley, who had been watching from the side of the gymnasium with growing alarm, stepped forward. Mr. Carter, I assure you, this will be thoroughly investigated. It already should have been, Alexander said. 3 weeks ago, when my son reported that another student stole his science project, and no one bothered to check, the name landed like a stone, dropped into still water. Ryan Whitfield, still seated in the front row, suddenly found the gymnasium floor extremely interesting. I'd like to request a meeting, Alexander said. You, myself, the relevant teachers, and the school board chairman. Tomorrow morning. Mr. Carter, I don't think that's entirely necessary. It is necessary, Alexander said, and for the first time, his voice carried something unmistakably close to warning. Because right now, my son is standing in the middle of this gymnasium, being called a liar and a thief by adults who were supposed to protect him, and I intend to understand exactly how that happened. Tomorrow morning, 9 o'clock. He turned to Noah, crouching slightly to meet his son's eyes, ignoring the 300 watching students entirely. You did nothing wrong. Do you understand me? Noah nodded, tears finally spilling over now that the danger had passed. I tried to tell them. I know you did. And I'm going to make sure they understand exactly what that cost you. That evening, Alexander made 3 phone calls. The first was to his head of corporate security, requesting a full digital forensics review of anything connected to Brookhaven's network. The second was to his personal attorney. The third, the one that took the longest, and the one Alexander made sitting alone in his study long after Noah had gone to bed, was to the private investigator his company retained for sensitive matters, a woman named Diane Osai, who had handled exactly 3 cases for him in the past decade, all of them serious. I need to know everything about how this school has been operating, Alexander told her. Financial records related to donations, any pattern of preferential treatment, and I need to know what happened to my son's science project and the missing pieces of it. Understood, O.C. said. Give me until morning. She had it done in 6 hours. What she found was worse than Alexander expected. Gerald Whitfield's donations to Brookhaven totaled nearly $2 million over 5 years, funneled not just through the athletic wing, but through a series of administrative discretionary grants that had, in practice, gone toward supplementing Principal Hensley's compensation package in ways that had never been disclosed to the board. In exchange, an informal but unmistakable pattern existed. Disciplinary issues involving Ryan Whitfield were consistently minimized, downgraded, or dismissed outright across 4 years of records. "There's more," Osei told Alexander, over the phone at 2 a.m., her voice carrying the particular weariness of someone who'd been reading spreadsheets for 6 straight hours. "This isn't the first time. 2 years ago, a different student accused Ryan of plagiarizing a history paper. The complaint was logged and then removed from the file within a week. Last year, a parent complained in writing that Ryan had physically shoved her son during recess. That complaint doesn't exist anywhere in the official record either. I only found it because the parent kept her own copy and posted about it, briefly, in a since-deleted community forum post I recovered through a cache. How many children has this happened to? At least 4 that I can document. Possibly more that were never formally reported at all, because parents assumed, correctly, that it wouldn't matter." Alexander sat with that for a long moment in the dark of his study. "Send me everything, every name, every date, every dismissed complaint. I want it all on the table tomorrow." The security footage from the science lab hallway on the night Noah's project was tampered with had been deleted from the school's primary server less than 12 hours after Ms. Alvarez first reported the theft to Principal Hensley. Deleted using an administrator login that traced back to Hensley's own credentials. But Osei's team found something Hensley hadn't anticipated: a secondary backup system, installed 18 months earlier as part of a cybersecurity insurance requirement neither Hensley nor his IT staff fully understood, that mirrored footage to an off-site cloud server automatically, independent of the primary system. The deleted footage still existed. It had simply never occurred to anyone who might have wanted it gone. The footage showed, with perfect clarity, Ryan Whitfield entering the science lab at 9:47 p.m., using a keycard that should not have granted him after-hours access, removing the filtration chamber and a stack of papers from Noah's open locker, and leaving 11 minutes later. "I want everyone in that meeting tomorrow," Alexander told Osei. "Hensley, Pierce, Davies, Alvarez, the board chairman, and Gerald Whitfield. I want them to see exactly what you found before I say another word." By 9 the next morning, the meeting had grown into something far larger than anyone at Brookhaven had anticipated. Not a quiet administrative conversation in Hensley's office, but a full gathering in the school's boardroom, because board chairman Marcus Whitcomb, once he understood the scope of what Osei's investigation had uncovered, insisted on convening the entire academic staff and, by the end of the morning, decided the resolution needed to happen in front of the whole school community, not buried in a private room. "If this happened in front of every student," Whitcomb said, his voice tight with barely controlled anger, "it gets corrected in front of every student. I will not let this become another quiet cover-up." Miss Pierce arrived pale and visibly rehearsed, clearly prepared to apologize in careful, lawyer-vetted language. Mr. Davies sat rigid, refusing to make eye contact with anyone. Principal Hensley looked, for the first time in his tenure, genuinely afraid. Gerald Whitfield arrived last, already defensive. "I'd like to understand what exactly my son is being accused of before this goes any further." "Your son is being accused," Alexander said quietly, "of stealing another student's science project, using an unauthorized keycard to do it, and receiving 4 years of institutional protection from disciplinary consequences in exchange for your financial contributions to this school. I have the security footage. I have the financial records. And in 1 hour, I intend to show both to the entire student body. You can't be serious." I have never been more serious in my life. The emergency assembly was called for 10:30. This time, when the gymnasium filled, Noah Carter did not stand alone in the center of the floor. He sat beside his father in the front row, Ms. Alvarez on his other side, while Principal Hensley stood before the entire school with a visible tremor in his hands. "There has been a serious failure of judgment at this school," Hensley began, reading from notes his attorney had drafted overnight. And it is my responsibility to correct it publicly, in the same manner the original injustice occurred. The footage played on the same overflow screen that had, only a day earlier, displayed Alexander's corporate dashboard. Ryan Whitfield's figure, unmistakable, moving through the science lab at 9:47 p.m. The gymnasium did not stay silent this time. It erupted, gasps, whispered accusations, several students turning immediately to stare at Ryan, who sat frozen, his face draining of color, exactly the way Miss Pierce's had the day before. In the parents section along the side wall, a woman Noah didn't recognize stood up abruptly. "That's the same night my son's project went missing last year," she said, her voice shaking with 2 years of built-up frustration. "I reported it. Nobody ever called me back." Whitcomb's expression tightened further. "We'll be reviewing every prior complaint on record, Mrs. Delgado. I promise you that personally." "Ryan," Whitcomb said, his voice carrying across the hall, "would you like to explain what we just watched?" Ryan said nothing for a long moment. When he finally spoke, his voice was smaller than anyone in that gymnasium had ever heard it. My project wasn't working, and his was so much better, and I panicked. I didn't think anyone would actually check." "You let another student be accused of stealing," Whitcomb said. "You let him be humiliated in front of the entire school. Do you understand the weight of that?" Ryan's eyes filled, and for the first time, whatever arrogance had carried him through 4 years of unearned praise cracked entirely. "I'm sorry," he said, and it was directed, finally, at Noah rather than the room. "I'm really sorry. I never should have." "Then why did you let it go this far?" Noah asked, standing now, his voice steady despite everything. "You could have said something when I got suspended. You knew." "I was scared," Ryan said. "I've never had to actually work for anything before. I didn't know how to lose." "Everyone loses sometimes," Noah said. "That's not the part I don't understand. I don't understand watching someone else get blamed for it and staying quiet." "I know," Ryan said, and his voice broke properly now, no longer performing for anyone. "I told myself it would just go away, that someone would figure it out and I wouldn't have to be the one to say it. That was easier than admitting I cheated, because I couldn't stand losing to you in front of everyone." Gerald Whitfield, seated near the back of the gymnasium, opened his mouth as if to defend his son, and then, seeing the look on Ryan's face, closed it again. Alexander Carter rose from his seat, and Chairman Whitcomb gestured toward him, inviting him forward without needing to ask. "Some of you may be wondering," Whitcomb said to the assembled hall, "why a parents' private meeting escalated into corporate investigators and security footage. I think it's time everyone understood exactly who Noah Carter's father is." "That's not necessary," Alexander said quietly, though he understood, watching Whitcomb's face, that it had already become necessary. "With respect, Mr. Carter, I believe it is. This school judged your son by his sweaters and his quiet manner, and assumed the absolute worst about his character, while judging another student by his father's checkbook and assuming the absolute best. I think this room needs to understand exactly how wrong that calculation was." Whitcomb turned back to the students. "Alexander Carter is the founder and chairman of Carter Dynamics Group. He is, by most public estimates, one of the wealthiest individuals in this country. He has quietly funded this school's scholarship program for 4 years without ever once asking for recognition, a wing named after him, or preferential treatment for his son." The gymnasium fell into a silence entirely different from either of the ones before it. Not the silence of humiliation, and not the silence of shock at a confession, but something closer to reckoning. "I didn't want recognition," Alexander said, addressing the students directly now, his voice carrying easily across the quiet hall. "I wanted my son to grow up being judged by who he actually is. Instead, this school judged him by what he didn't have, and judged another boy by what his family gave you. Both of those judgments were wrong, and both of them hurt real children." He looked at Noah, who was watching him, with an expression somewhere between exhaustion and quiet pride. My son built a working water purification system in our garage over 4 months, entirely on his own, that could genuinely help communities without clean electricity. That's who he is, not his sweaters, not his father's bank account. The work he does when he thinks no one important is watching. This is the moment that changes everything for Noah. And if it's already getting to you, that's exactly the reaction we hope for. Comment below one word for how this scene makes you feel. And if you haven't yet, subscribe to Billionaire Story Vault so you don't miss where this story goes next. The days that followed moved quickly. Marcus Whitcomb, with the full backing of the school board, dismissed Principal Hensley within 72 hours, along with Mr. Davies, whose pattern of favoritism toward Ryan and dismissiveness toward Noah was documented extensively once other students and parents, emboldened by the assembly, began coming forward with their own long-ignored complaints. Ms. Pierce was placed on probationary review rather than terminated outright, largely due to Ms. Alvarez's insistence that she had, in the moment, genuinely believed she was protecting the school from a lie rather than participating in one, a mistake made out of bias rather than malice, though a serious one nonetheless. "I owe you an apology I don't know how to give properly," Miss Pierce told Noah privately, a week later, her composure entirely gone. "I looked at you and saw a story I'd already decided was true before you said a single word. That's not something an apology fixes. I just want you to know I understand that now." "Thank you for saying it," Noah said. He was quiet for a moment. "I forgive you. I don't think I'll forget it, but I forgive you." Ryan's suspension lasted 2 weeks, during which his father withdrew his name from the school's donor recognition wall entirely, less as an act of humility than a quiet effort at damage control that nonetheless resulted in an unexpected outcome. Without his father's money attached to his reputation, Ryan found himself, for the first time in his academic life, simply a student like any other. "I don't know how to do that," Ryan admitted to Noah the week he returned, sitting 2 seats away in the newly reassigned science lab. "Just be normal. Actually earn things." "Nobody knows how at first," Noah said. "You just start." It wasn't friendship, not yet, and maybe not ever entirely, but it was something honest, which was more than 4 years of their relationship had ever contained before. The regional science competition, delayed 2 weeks to accommodate the investigation, went forward with Noah's original prototype fully restored, Ms. Alvarez having kept careful documentation of every stage of its development, specifically because she'd never fully trusted the environment around it. Priya found Noah backstage before the judging began, practically vibrating with excitement. "Everyone's talking about it, you know. Not the tablet thing. Your actual project. People are asking to see it, who never even looked at it before." "Took them long enough," Noah said, though he was smiling. "I always looked at it," Priya said. "I just didn't have a billionaire dad to make everyone else look too." "You don't need one. You've got a mouth that doesn't stop when something's unfair. That's worth more, honestly." "Careful, Carter. That almost sounded like a compliment." Noah won first place. His water purification design was picked up for pilot testing by a nonprofit working in 3 countries without reliable municipal power, a detail that mattered infinitely more to him than the trophy itself. "You know what your mother would say," Alexander told him the night of the win, sitting together on the back porch of their unremarkable, comfortable house. "That the trophy doesn't matter as much as who I was while I built it." "Word for word," Alexander said, laughing despite the ache that still lived in him whenever Elena came up. "You really were listening all those years." "I always listen," Noah said. "Even when it seems like I'm not," Alexander announced. Quietly and without the fanfare Whitcomb had once again tried to insist on, that Carter Dynamics Group would fund a new science laboratory at Brookhaven, along with an expanded scholarship program specifically targeting students whose families could not otherwise afford tuition, the exact opposite, deliberately, of a donor wing with a name on it. He also insisted on one additional condition: delivered directly to the school board rather than through lawyers. A formal, binding equal treatment policy, reviewed annually by an independent parent and student committee, ensuring no future disciplinary matter could be resolved differently based on a family's financial relationship to the school. "Call it whatever you want administratively," Alexander told Whitcomb, "but I want it written down somewhere that can't quietly disappear the way that footage almost did." The final morning of the school year, Alexander drove Noah to school himself, as he always tried to on days that mattered. Though this one wasn't marked by any test or ceremony, just an ordinary Tuesday that felt, to both of them, like the actual end of something much larger than a semester. "Can I ask you something?" Noah said, staring out the window at Brookhaven's gates coming into view. "Always. Are you going to keep hiding who you are after all this?" Alexander considered the question longer than Noah expected. "I think the secret already stopped serving its purpose the moment it protected you less than it should have. But hiding wasn't really the point, Noah. The point was making sure you knew who you were before the world decided to tell you. I think you know that now. Better than I did at your age, honestly. I still don't feel like anything's different. I'm still just Noah." "That," Alexander said, pulling up to the curb, "is exactly the point. You were always just Noah. It just took this school an entire year of doing everything wrong to finally see it. Do you think Ryan's actually going to change? Or is he just scared right now?" "Probably both. For a while," Alexander said. "People rarely change all at once. It's usually 100 small choices after the big one everybody saw. Whether he keeps making the better ones when no one's watching, that's on him now. Not you, not me, not his father's checkbook. I hope he does. It felt worse seeing him cry than I expected. I thought I'd feel like I won something. What did you feel instead?" Noah thought about it for a moment. "Just tired, and a little sad for him, actually. Is that weird?" "No," Alexander said. "That's your mother, coming through loud and clear. She never could enjoy watching someone lose, even people who deserve to." Noah stepped out of the car, backpack slung over one shoulder, no premium tablet in sight, just the same 2 rotating sweaters he'd worn all year, and walked through Brookhaven's gates as precisely who he had always been. A boy who built things quietly, forgave people who didn't always deserve it easily, and never once needed a magnifying glass to know exactly who he was. A person's worth is never measured by their clothes, their wealth, or their family name, only by the choices they make when no one important is watching. If you were Noah, would you have forgiven the teachers the way he did? Tell us in the comments below, and if this story moved you, make sure to like this video, share it with someone who needs the reminder, and subscribe to Billionaire Story Vault for more emotional stories like this one. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the next story.